community. Today we're going to learn from Cooperative Emergency Outreach and New Beginnings. So we have a lot of good stuff in store this morning. Just like last week, I'm going to have a colorful sheet to hand you that includes some scripture, some questions to think about, and a reflection that I've written. You don't need to do anything with it for the next hour, but take it home with you, and it's just some food for thought as you reflect on where you might be called to serve in the community. As y'all probably all have realized, we don't have breakfast this morning because we're trying to stay masked as much as possible. With that in mind, please enjoy your coffee. Certainly, I will be too, but keep your mask on if you're not enjoying that coffee. Thank you. I think that's all that I need to say this morning. So I'll pass it over to Solomon, and then I'll come run around with these sheets, but you don't need to do anything with them. Just listen and see what God is speaking through our community partners.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me double check. Can you hear me all right? Yes. All good. Sweet. I don't have to yell. I brought a PowerPoint, but I've used a fancy template, and I'm afraid that the Google Sheets is not like it might be kind of muddled, so we'll get through this, but you won't be able to read everything that I have on the screen probably. Good morning, I'm Solomon. I'm with New Beginnings. It's an alternative shelter community or a bridge housing community. I wanted to start sharing today just saying that we face really a crisis in homelessness and housing across our country because we haven't approached housing as a basic human right. And if we approach it as a basic human right, then it's part of our social compact, right? It's in our budgets. It's protected by law. If we treat housing more like a commodity, like a washing machine or a chainsaw, then we treat it like you can have it if you can afford it, and you can have a better one if you can afford a better one. But if it's a basic human right that's fundamental to our health and our community's well-being, then we take a different approach. So right now in our country, not only do we see about 90,000 people who are chronically homeless, long-term, many years, often have disabling conditions, we also see about 600,000 people literally homeless on the streets tonight who are just going through a situational homeless experience. And on top of that, we see millions, some estimate 10 to 12 million people who are on the brink, often in crowded housing situations, doubled up on a sofa, don't have access to their own safe, decent, permanent dwelling. So that's kind of that big picture. And to step into that, what we're trying to do at New Beginnings is provide a place for some of those chronically homeless people to access life-affirming shelter and be able to get the supports they may need to access the limited options for housing that could be available to them in our community. Here's some pictures. If you turn your head to the right, you can see like an overview of the cabins we've built. The site includes 20 individual cabins. They're relatively small, 13 foot by 9 feet, and are just the basics. Then there's a main building that has shared facilities. So there's a bathroom, and there's 3 bathrooms and showers. There's laundry facilities. There's kitchen. There's computers. There's a social worker. So you combine it together, and there's the New Beginnings alternative shelter community. I'm going to walk through just some pictures first and then kind of answer those who, what, where, how questions. So the cabins themselves look like this. It's made by a company that employs formerly homeless and formerly incarcerated people who designed and work to build these in a factory. So they've kind of thought of all the basics and integrated it into one small shelter. There's a locking door, which is most people's favorite feature. How do I stay safe at night? I've talked to women especially who tell me they have to drink themselves to sleep at night because they don't feel safe where they're camping. They couldn't fall asleep under normal circumstances. A lot of people talk about going out in the community to get work done on goals or just to survive and worrying about their stuff. Someone can steal everything I own, including the photos of my mom or my birth certificate. So having a locked door really is a huge just benefit for somebody. The climate control, these do have an air conditioner and a heater in them. We're told that we could have survived this snowpocalypse with the insulation and the heating that we have and not had to relocate anybody. And then there's a wall charger that's just for phones and tablets. So it's not outlets where you could plug in a hot plate and a refrigerator and all that stuff that the fire marshal does not love. But it does allow you to charge your device, and we will have Wi-Fi over the entire community. In the shared building, which you saw in the last slide, that's where there's the 3 bathrooms and showers. These are just private individual ones that are unisex. There's laundry facilities and a kitchen. The kitchen is actually a commercial kitchen, so it won't just be free access to anyone anytime. We'll have some regulations around it. But we plan on providing breakfast every day. We're going to try to connect residents to the community meals already happening, including here at St. Paul's, in the lunchtime. And in the evenings, we're building out a partner list of communities that want to help come on site and bring a meal and share time with the residents at New Beginnings. So what you can't read probably in the bottom is going to be a skipped one. Nope. Well, there was one that should have said, who? First, who are we trying to prioritize at New Beginnings? So in Northwest Arkansas, we maintain a list of names of people experiencing homelessness. All the nonprofits work together through the continuum of care to maintain that list. There's about 500 people names on that list. And weekly, when we case conference housing programs, we review that list, we review openings, and we try to match people to the right openings. Within that list of 500 people, we've done proactive outreach to those who are long-term homeless, multiple years, often have a disabling condition, still unsheltered. In America, I think for the last 4 years, we've seen 4 consecutive years of increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness, and it's driven by chronically unsheltered people. 21% of the increase is long-term homeless, unsheltered people, people not accessing emergency shelter. So that's who we're prioritizing, is the people that are quote-unquote hardest to help, people that are in the most vulnerable circumstances, trying to triage the resources we do have to be matched to those people in those most vulnerable circumstances. Then, what makes the community special or different? I spent quite a bit of time visiting with future residents at New Beginnings to talk about how do we make this a place that's safe, that's appealing, that's supportive, that's resourceful. So the 4 things I've landed on to share about is, one, we're prioritizing safety. There will be a staff person 24/7. A lot of times, even some of y'all know and have been many times to Safe Camp here in Fayetteville. It's been a great site during the pandemic. One issue you'll always hear from campers is at night it's completely different out here. Right? You're here during the day. At night it's completely different. We're trying to prioritize safety and have a staff person 24/7. There is a fence around New Beginnings. Residents have a key fob to be able to come and go as needed, but we are prioritizing safety. Also trying to be a low barrier shelter community. What I'm referring to here is that a lot of times when we make programs to serve people experiencing homelessness, we put up these barriers like, oh, we're providing shelter, but we can't work with people that have these behavior health problems. And we'd like to help people who are chronically homeless, but we can't accommodate, people that are alcoholics or active substance users. The people need to take all their medication if they're going to stay here. If they can't do that, then we can't serve them. And what that ends up doing is creating this program where you screen out some of the very people, many of the very people you were designed to serve. So a low-barrier shelter community tries to make as few rules as possible. You have to abide by the safety rules. You have to abide by the community agreements, which we'll talk about in a second. And you do have to stay engaged with the social worker to be focused on finding more permanent housing. But besides those pretty basic things, adults are able to live as they see fit. That's going to allow us to offer life-affirming shelter to people who are currently unsheltered and can't access other programs. Being unsheltered takes, on average, 20-25 years off your life. So even if nothing else changes in the person's life, being able to access shelter or housing after that is just a life-affirming thing to offer. We are going to be a resident-guided community. There's some of these little villages popping up around the country where residents share control. This is absolutely at the center of what we're trying to do. Some things like the safety rules are not open for democratic change. But there's a community agreement that residents can create and revise that's focused around what's it like living here. Can we have guests in this community? How often? When? What are the rules? Can we have pets? What if someone doesn't take care of their pet? What if my dog gets in fights with your dog? How are we going to keep it clean and organized? Who's going to sit at the front desk to accept volunteers and donations? All these kinds of rules are going to be guided by the residents at a weekly meeting, and they can revise them as they want to. And lastly, we're a housing-focused shelter community. This is not a permanent place to stay. This isn't mainstream housing. We do call it bridge housing sometimes to create that language for this is a place to feel safe and get resources and use it as a bridge to get where you're going. But this isn't mainstream permanent housing. Every week, the social worker will meet with each resident to spend time working on their goals that can lead to more permanent housing. Getting a birth certificate that they've lost, applying for public housing, staying in communication with the housing programs they've applied to so that when there's an opening, it doesn't pass them over, which is what happens a lot of times now for chronically unsheltered people. If you wrap this up, it kind of is it's an attempt to embody a trauma-informed approach for working with people who've been through hell. You want to prioritize safety, make sure that you're sharing control and focusing on empowerment, and not low barriers, not putting unnecessary barriers in between services that can help that person and the people that need that help. You can help. Probably can't see this, but there's a heart and a piggy bank. If you love what we're doing, we do need volunteers. Right now, we need volunteers to, I guess, and maybe David just left. You're fine, David. I believe that David is volunteering. Now he's coming back in to make sure what I'm volunteering him for. We've chatted about potentially having a shuttle that helps come from New Beginnings to St. Paul so that meals are accessible during lunchtime. We're also looking for a few donations remaining. Some of them are pet carriers, so people can crate their animals in their cabins and have that air conditioning on while they leave for the day. That's one of our needs. We'll have a vehicle at New Beginnings, and I need volunteer drivers. I don't want the social worker to turn into just an Uber driver. But there will be a lot of point A to point B appointments related to health, related to housing, related to employment. So volunteer drivers are a great need. And then, of course, financial support is a wonderful way to help make New Beginnings a sustainable operation so that we can focus on doing the work and not constantly raising the next payroll. And another piece under the piggy bank is, and I'm speaking a little too soon on this, but we're going to roll out a way for us to kind of GoFundMe approach to fill a housing-focused bank account for individual residents that would help provide them stability as they moved out. The affordability piece is just a major component of housing stability, so having a bank account for someone to have when they move out is huge. My last slide, my second to last slide. This is locally, if I think about solutions, I always encourage people to think about 3 big things. To end chronic homelessness, we need supportive housing. That's my top one. This is the kind of housing that is subsidized, so it's affordable, and it comes with a social worker indefinitely, so that I have someone to help me maintain stability, get along with neighbors, manage my money, stay connected to supports in the community. We have a few slots of that in Fayetteville. We have a couple dozen. And then we have a couple hundred people. So we just need to scale that program to the size of the challenge. Affordable housing is second. There's something like 15,000 residents in renter households in Northwest Arkansas who spend more than half their monthly income on their housing costs. More than half. The recommended amount is 30% or below. So we have something like 42,000 people spending above 30, and we have about 15 to 18,000 renter households spending 50% of their monthly income. Markets have really never produced housing, decent, safe housing for poor people. That's just the history. If you look at the history in our country, markets haven't found the way to do that. We've seen safe, decent, affordable housing in our country when we've taken collective action and built that housing. We haven't always built safe, decent housing, but affordable housing and a housing trust fund is probably a great way for us to start. And accessible housing is the last piece to throw out there as we think about the social dimension that contributes to creating homelessness. If there's an affordable unit, but there's barriers because I have a felony background or I have credit issues, those accessibility issues can be just as prohibitive. So thinking about how to overcome in our culture with so much mass incarceration impacting the same communities that are overrepresented in the homeless population means that figuring out how to find housing that's accessible is one piece of the solution. I encourage us to think of housing as a basic human right. It supports people's health, people's mental wellness, people's recovery, and people's employment. Housing is a foundation that we all build on to thrive and contribute in our community. So whatever it is that helps take us towards that goal, I think will help. And hopefully at New Beginnings, what we're starting is some way to love our neighbors who are chronically homeless and encourage our community to think more about housing as a human right. That's my presentation. And I'd love to have conversation. So maybe after, I don't know how much time we have, so I might just pause and let Annabelle share. But if there's going to be conversation, I'd love to have that dialogue.
We'll do a couple questions focused on this presentation, and then switch to Annabelle, have a couple questions on that, and then if y'all are willing to stick around for any lingering conversation, and some of us will go over to service. But any questions about New Beginnings? What are you curious about?
Where is the location, both of the cabins and of any administrative office?
Yeah, our entire community is...
The question is about location, physical location.
So our entire community is at 251 West 19th Street. If you're going down South School and you see the Seven Hills Day Center, it's the next road, take a left. And then you'll see us on the right. We're the only buildings right there. Yeah, our website's newbeginningsnwa.org.
Do you have like a social Facebook page as well as a website?
We do. We've got the Facebook, Instagram. Don't think we have Twitter, but absolutely find us on social media. New Beginnings NWA.
Is there time? How many can you accommodate?
Yeah. We'll have 20 cabins, and 4 of them are set up to accommodate couples who are going through chronic homelessness. So I'm estimating between 20 and 25 at a given time.
And what's the normal stay time? How long can usually they stay?
I think we'll learn that over our time operating. I'd say that we'll have a boutique case management approach, which means I want to tailor it to each individual and not have a kind of one-size-fits-all time window. When the timer runs out, you got to move. I know that each person's case is different. And so somebody with disabilities that's doing everything right, but there's just not an appropriate housing option, I don't want to have a deadline where I just kick them back out. I'd rather advocate for more options for them to move out into.
You talked about volunteer opportunities. Do you have to have a chauffeur's license or anything like that? What do you request of your volunteers? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
For volunteer drivers, we don't have to have a chauffeur license or any special driver's license. I don't anticipate drivers transporting large groups of people. It'll probably just be 1, maybe 2 people at a time. So if you're interested in volunteering, there's a link on the website. It kind of asks you your interests and assets, and then we'll connect with you from there.
Is it handicap accessible van?
The van itself, we haven't purchased it yet, but I do plan on that, yeah.
I'm wondering about the community building. Is it open for use since it has laundry and computer access and that kind of thing? Is it open to others who are homeless but not in your cabins yet?
Right. We're going to start with these resources available exclusively to the residents there. We may reassess that in the future, but I kind of like that idea of having this limited 3 bathrooms available just to residents, and then they're really taking responsibility to keep it clean because it's just them using it.
Do you currently have residents?
Do I currently have residents? No, I've got the list of 20 first people and then a bullpen of about 5 to 8 additional people in case something changes with that first 20. We aren't open, we can't occupy yet. There's a lot of little permitting hoops we have to jump through during this month, and we are confident by the end of this month we'll be open and serving people.
I think we're going to stop there and transition our presentations. There will probably be time at the end or after we wrap up officially that you can ask some of those questions one-on-one as well. So we'll switch to learning about cooperative emergency outreach.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm Annabelle Steelman. I've actually been a member of St. Paul's for about 40 years now. I've been working with Cooperative Emergency Outreach since about 1994. And I'm going to give you a short history of CEO for those of you that are not familiar with it. When people need help to pay the rent, pay the electric bill, get food, they typically go to a church and ask for help. So people would come to St. Paul's and get some help. Go across the street to Central, get some help. Maybe go across the street to First Baptist, get a little help there. In 1990, the Fayetteville Ministerial Alliance decided, how about centralizing this help? Put everything in one place. It will take a burden off of the individual churches and make it easier for the clients because they only have to go to one place. So that's how, so in December of 1990, CEO opened, and that's how it was born. At that time, there were 12 churches. St. Paul's was one of the founding churches of CEO. That has grown now to 22 churches: Episcopalian, Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, Quakers, and Unitarians are all currently members of CEO. A church becomes a member of CEO by agreeing to have someone on the board of directors, to provide volunteer hours, and to make a financial commitment monthly. And this varies according to the church. Large churches may give as much as $1,000 or $2,000 a month. Smaller churches, some of them may be only $50 or $100 a month. Up until about 18 months ago, we all know what happened then, but CEO was open 5 days a week and one Saturday. And one thing that made CEO unique is that it was just about the only help agency in the area that was open 5 days a week. Most of them are open just 2 or 3 days. After we had to close temporarily, last year when we reopened, we cut back to 3 days a week, both to accommodate distancing requirements and because we did lose a lot of our volunteers. CEO is 100% volunteer organization. There are no paid staff. Everything is done by volunteers. The only expenses that we have are building, upkeep, maintenance, and insurance. We buy food from the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank, in addition to food drives by churches, community organizations, fraternities, sororities, post office. Lots of people have food drives. Fayetteville Public Library have food drives. But we do anything we don't get from food drives, we do buy from the food bank, except for pet food, right? Pet food must be donated. So we do provide pet food to our clients, but we can't buy that. All of that has to be donated. What else? One reason that we lost a lot of volunteers during the pandemic is that CEO's hours are from 1 until 3 p.m. Obviously, that means that lots of people are working during those hours, especially before people were working from home. So the majority of our volunteers tend to be older people, usually retired, because those are the ones that are available from 1 to 3. Many of those volunteers obviously quit volunteering during the pandemic. Not all of them have come back. When we go back to 5 days a week, we will have a very great need for volunteers. I think that pretty much covers. Well, we do our service area. Service area is Washington County south of the mall, which means we don't serve Springdale, but we serve the rest of Washington County south of the mall. So Fayetteville, Winslow, West Fork, Prairie Grove, Farmington, Lincoln, and anything in the county that's south of the mall. That's a lot of information in a short time. We provide rental assistance. We do have limited funds. So if we can't give somebody $1,000 for a month's rent or even $500 for a month's rent, but we can provide assistance. If they only need $100 or $200 to get up to $600, often we can provide that. If they need an extra $50 or $75 to pay their electric bill, they have almost enough money, we can provide that. Utility help, rental assistance, gasoline money, food. We can do clothing vouchers to local thrift stores like Goodwill or The Attic, Potter's House.
Thank you for that quick overview. I imagine there are questions that were sparked by that. I'll remind you that for folks online to hear us, and probably for folks far away from you in the room, we do need to ask questions through the microphone, so I'll keep running around for questions. What are you curious about?
So one of the things CEO does is sort of centralize expertise. And so I'm curious, one of the things we talk about in the vestry sometimes is because CEO exists, like our staff don't have to know all the resources that are available in town. So what percentage of your work is, someone comes in and you're able to help them directly versus the CEO volunteers know I need to send you over to this other place.
Right,
Yeah.
yes. We do what we can for the client, and then we also have a resource sheet that lists all of the food pantries, thrift stores, other help organizations, legal aid, spay-neuter assistance for your pet, food bank for the pet. There are a couple of them in Fayetteville and in Washington County. Other organizations that can provide clothing, housing assistance. So we have a fairly extensive resource sheet that we will give to the client so that they can have access to these other resources available.
Where are you located physically?
We are at 1649 Huntsville Road in Fayetteville. When CEO first opened, we opened in the basement of the old Washington County Jail in 1990. Soon after that, we moved to Rock Street, and a lot of people were familiar with our Rock Street location. It was right across the street from the old part of the new library. And that was generously donated by the Washington Regional Medical Foundation. That building was demolished to make the new part of the new library. And so I believe it was 2013 that we actually purchased our own building. So now we have a permanent location. We have a food pantry. We also, about 3 years ago, I believe, Tyson Foods gifted us a 5,000 cubic foot freezer that we have in back to store meat, chicken, that sort of thing.
I knew I had a second question. Have you kept statistics on the number of people that you've been serving, and how has COVID affected?
I do have some brochures that you can pick up afterwards, and also a fact sheet. The fact sheet is a year or two old, but we serve, put this back on here. We serve about, sorry, I'm just going to hang on to this. We serve about 14,000 clients annually. 85% of those generally get food, in addition to any monetary assistance for rent or utilities. We do have some homeless clients. About 6% of our clients are homeless, and I think that this is from about 2 years ago. I think that from what I've seen, I believe that percentage has probably gone up. Our homeless clients usually only are getting food, and we do have separate homeless food, things that don't need refrigeration or cooking. Sometimes they need something like an ID or a renewal of a driver's license, and that can be provided. We are serving fewer people since we've gone to 3 days a week because we just don't have the volunteer staff to do as many people. So we have cut down on our number of days. We've cut down on the number of clients we see. We generally see anywhere from 15 to 20 clients a day. And that a client can be one individual, can represent a couple, or can represent a couple with 6 children. So generally, probably 30, a total of 30, we provide food for anywhere from generally 30 to 50 people a day.
Going to the guidelines that we're bound by.
I'm sorry?
The guidelines that we're bound by in serving clients as to assistance with utilities.
Yes,
and rent
yeah. We do not want clients to overuse our facilities because our resources, as I say, are limited. So we do keep files on each client. They are eligible to get rental assistance twice a year. They are eligible to get utility assistance twice a year. Food and gasoline and clothing vouchers, well, I'm sorry, not clothing vouchers, food and gasoline can be requested 3 times in a 6-month period.
Do you have any restrictions on pet food donations as far as wet food or dry food, or where you guys take?
We don't. Generally, dry food is what we distribute because it's easier to store as long as but we have accepted canned food. So yeah, so no restrictions there. As long as it doesn't have to be refrigerated.
Do you receive any assistance from the county? They've been in possession of rental funds.
I'm sorry, from who?
The county, Washington County government? No.
No.
Okay.
No, we receive no government funds. All of our funds come from individuals and member churches.
So that's a restriction. If it were offered, you'd refuse it? Is that?
I'm sorry?
That is a restriction that you've imposed on accepting funds? The county's put away $11 million of rental and CARES funds.
We are not, as I said, we are a 100% volunteer organization, so we do not have the time, people, or expertise to deal with all of the paperwork that is involved in something like that. So that's one of our we would refer them. We will refer them to the Housing Authority. We will refer them to EOA for utility assistance, or we will refer them to whoever's handling that sort of county rental assistance, because we just are unable to do that directly.
Could you list the volunteer opportunities that we currently need at CEO?
Yes, our primary need right now for volunteers are interviewers and computer operators. Normally, clients would come in and we would have a receptionist to take their information. Our clients, we work on a first come, first served basis. So we don't take appointments. The clients arrive, they're given a number in order of arrival, and that is how they're seen. Normally, we would have a receptionist to take that information and give them a number. During the pandemic, since we are requesting that our clients wait outside rather than coming into the lobby, we don't have a receptionist. That will be something that we will need when we reopen to full capacity. Our clients are interviewed individually and privately by a volunteer who gets their information and assesses their need. And so interview positions are one thing that we need volunteers for. That interviewer then speaks to the daily manager who assesses the need, determines what help we can give and how much help we can give. And then all of our checks are written by computer, and the computer operator also keeps the daily tallies of how many people we see, how many are in their family, and writes the check on the computer. So so right now, the computer person, that's one a day, and the interviewers are our 2 primary needs. And volunteers, some volunteers work 1 day a month, others work every week. I think the average is probably people that work 2 to 3 days a month. So it's not a huge commitment.
Is it possible that the volunteers could work from home, interview clients by telephone?
Unfortunately, no. We're not set up for that, both because we have to see the client's identification, and the interviewer needs to converse with the daily manager in order to be able to assess the situation and determine what help is available.
Any other questions for either of our presenters? Or just general questions about outreach at St. Paul's? Trent, I see you starting to move. Call you out.
Annabelle, could you restate what the commitment is for medium to large churches to be a partner with CEO? I think you said a monthly commitment of $1,000 to $1,500. Is that
no,
right?
the amount is left totally to the church. I was just saying that the amount can vary anywhere from $50 up to a couple of $1,000s, depending on the size of the church. But the amount is left up to the church.
But that's $50 to $1,000 per
month.
Okay.
Per month, yes. Yes, but yeah, the financial commitment is not something that we impose. It's something that is volunteered by the church. We just would like them, as a member church, to make some sort of monthly financial commitment and agree to provide some volunteers.
Thank you. And I had a question for Solomon. So when I've kind of shared with friends or family members some of what's going on in Fayetteville and addressing homelessness, some of the responses I get are like, well, Fayetteville seems to be creating its homeless problem by being a homeless-friendly community. So I guess I'm wondering, what is the balance between wanting to be a community that cares and does what it can to deal with chronic homelessness, but also, how would you address that question if someone asked you that, or made that comment?
Yeah, I hear that sometimes too. In general, my approach is that homeless services creates homelessness in the way that a hospital creates sickness. I think that we provide basic needs services and shelter and supportive housing and the supports that people need to maintain stable housing as a way of filling in gaps for, a lot of people that maybe have not experienced access to our systems of care and support. And so, I don't know, there's probably a longer conversation there, but in general, I would just flip it around. I really think that the reason we have so much is because there's so much need in the community. Maybe one aspect of what kind of seems out of sorts in Northwest Arkansas is that Fayetteville offers a lot where maybe in some other cities there's not as much. So I think that's a testament to the faith communities and the city governments and the other just nonprofits that have stepped up to provide these supports. But I don't think it creates the need.
Probably have time for a couple more questions, if there's any, or some time to maybe talk one-on-one with our presenters as well.
Okay, I will have the brochures from CEO and also some fact sheets. If anybody's interested, I will leave them up here and you can grab one.
Great. Thank you, Solomon and Annabelle, for being here with us.